So, hello everyone. Thank you for being with us today for this introduction to the Global Biodiversity Score for financial institution. Okay, hello everyone. So we're going to start this session. Thank you very much for attending this webinar on the Global Biodiversity Score solutions for financial institutions. I share with you the agenda for today. So we will start with an introduction by Antoine Caddy, our Director of Research and Innovation at the CDC Biodiversité. Then we will have Anne-Marie Bohr, who will present us the international context and more particularly what she's been doing on the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge. Then Antoine Vallier, myself, will give you an introduction to the Global Biodiversity Score methodology and more particularly the specification for financial institutions. Then we will have Marianne Vincent, Head of Business Development at Carbon for Finance, will present you the Biodiversity Impacts Analytics BIA database that Carbon for Finance has been developing. And finally, we will end this session with Laurent Debord, Head of Equity Portfolio Management and Fund Selection at the Group Caisse des Dépôts Asset Management Division. We will present the work we've been doing recently together. So I'll hand it to Antoine for the introduction.
Thank you, Antoine. Hello, everyone. Thank you to be connected with us this afternoon. I'm very happy to introduce this webinar on GBS solutions for financial institutions. It is a good way to start 2021, which I'm sure will be a key year for biodiversity. In 1 minute, I will let Anne-Marie tell you more about this, but as many of you already know, we have very important events this year. It started in Paris with the One Planet Summit last week, which put biodiversity at the center of the international negotiations. In September, Marseille will host IUCN World Congress, and finally, we will conclude with the COP15 in China next autumn. We don't know precisely when, but it will start in autumn. We believe that important commitments will be taken by all on the political side, obviously, but also on the economical side. It is now very well understood by everyone that ecological transition cannot be achieved without economic actors strongly involved. It's CDC Biodiversity mandate to help those actors to understand their role and responsibilities, risks and opportunities, and also advise them to transform the way they operate to be compatible with the preservation of biodiversity. In this context, we always believe that measure has a key role to play. We start to develop a solution 5 years ago, the Global Biodiversity Score, which first official version was launched last May. For this measurement tool, we always target 2 main categories of users: corporates and investors. For us, it is important to give them a common framework, a common language to create virtuous dynamic between them. The same way we did for climate, On the corporate side first, we see a strong momentum. For now, we have several companies conducting full biodiversity footprint assessments, following the example of Schneider Electric, who achieved this work last year. We also building a strong community of assessors, which more than 10 consultant companies certified for now, and more are coming in 2021. On the investor side, 2021 will be a rich year as well. I won't spoil today's presentation, but I'm very happy to host strong partners such as Carbon for Finance and La Caisse des Dépôts. The projects we have with them are very representative and of what kind of solution can be achieved with GBS, and we hope that it will it will be inspirational to you. So thank you again, and I will let Anne-Marie Borg present you one of the key initiatives for investors in 2021, the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge. Anne-Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Antoine, and also thank you for the opportunity to present the pledge in this event. But before really explaining more about the pledge, I would like to share a brief video with the CEOs explaining about the pledge.
We don't hear the sound, Antoine.
Resources sustainably. And we will make every effort to take our share of responsibility
and contribute to the protection and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems
through our financing activities and investments.
We therefore commit to the following
by 2024 at the latest.
Collaborate and share knowledge.
Engage with companies. Assess impact.
Set targets.
And report publicly.
So this was shown during the launch, 25 September, during the United Nations General Assembly Week. And I'll share some slides to further explain what it's all about. So the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge was initiated by a community of practice in the run-up to the COP15, the negotiations on biodiversity, which will take place most likely October this year, organized by the Convention of Biological Diversity. And it was initiated by the Finance and Biodiversity Community, which is a group that is already gathering since 2017 under the European Business and Biodiversity Platform. And I think the slides will be shared afterwards. I made some links on the slides, so this is the one to the video that was just shown. And there are more videos and individual statements as well on the website. The pledge is a collective commitment on biodiversity, the first one as far as I know. So it's a call on global leaders to really agree on effective measures to reverse nature loss in this decade to ensure ecosystem resilience. But also not only a call on global leaders, a commitment by financial institutions themselves. What can they do themselves and what kind of promise are they making in this field? So this is about collaborating and sharing knowledge, engaging with companies, assessing impact and setting targets, and also to report publicly by 2024 at the latest. So these are the 5 commitments that financial institutions that sign up to the pledge are committing themselves to publicly. And at the moment, yeah, okay. It's the first time I'm sharing slides in this way, so need to find out a bit, but it works. So at the moment of launching, we had 26 signatories, and we had an additional celebration of new signatories on the 9th of December during the annual meeting of the Business and Biodiversity Platform, which is now the European Business and Nature Summit. And so we were very happy to welcome another 11 signatories. It's a mixture, as you can see, of banks, investors, asset owners, asset managers, but also impact funds and insurance companies. So it's really a diversity in itself, and all committed to these 5 commitments. It's representing 13 countries and at the moment 3 continents. So also the USA, Canada, but also Oceania with Australia is involved. And we hope to be with more. So it's really like a growing movement in the run-up to the COP15 to make a strong voice over there and also support a high outcome of the CBD negotiations. So the initiators were the members of the Finance and Biodiversity Community, which is part of this European Business and Biodiversity Platform. They've been gathering since 2017, about 3 meetings per year, different topics, measuring impact, positive impact, and many other topics. Target setting and ambition and responsibility has been high in the agenda as well. Last year, they came up with the idea to set up a pledge, and then we started drafting the pledge, and it was launched in September during the UNGA week. And also one of the institutions got the opportunity to speak during the UNGA itself as well, Thomas Buberl on behalf of AXA Group. With the pledge, we've also made a guidance document. It's a 13-page document, which is an overview of all kinds of sources that are already out there in line with the 5 commitments, but also on risks and opportunities. And it also includes some examples. So if you would like to have a first idea of what can be done in this field, you can just look up on this guidance document. It's on the website finance and for biodiversity.org. At the moment, we're working on an annex. So we plan to have annexes most likely on each commitment. We started with commitment 3, assess impact. And we're now working on an annex, which is more like a guide on measurement approaches that are out there at the moment, such as the one that will be presented today as well. So this overview, we hope to have it ready by the end of February this year. And it provides more in-depth overview of approaches that are out there at the moment. These are the approaches that will be in it. So the BFFI, which is in use by ASM Bank, CBF, Corporate Biodiversity Footprint, developed in development by Iceberg Data Lab, GBS and BIA, which will be explained today as well, STAR, which is more like a metric on species, developed by IUCN, and the ENCORE tool, which is not really about measurement, but more like assessment, mapping, natural capital opportunities, risks and exposure, and developed by UNWCMC. So these are the criteria that will be in this overview on measurement. So we'll look into whether pressures are covered or not. So it will not only be about impact on a site, but also through the whole value chain. And also there will be a little bit more explanation on metrics that are in use at the moment and the link with the data sources. So next steps, at the moment with the group of signatories, the 37 we're having on board right now, we're looking into further collaboration in how to organize this. So this is, well, we hope to have this more clarity on this within 1 or 2 months to further support collaboration. Of course, there will still also be the community of practice, which is also open to non-European financial institutions. And we'll have next rounds of celebrating new signatories. So if you're not, if you did not sign up yet, please join us. And yeah, we're open to further questions on this. We plan to have a next moment of celebrating new signatories in May. And of course, also during the CBD COP. Yeah, we really hope to be with a big group by then to really encourage the global leaders to aim high for the CBD outcome. Yeah, and I'm coordinating this together with Anita de Horde. And this is because we're also coordinating the finance and biodiversity community contracted by the European Commission. So at the moment, we're the secretariat for the pledge for this initiative. And I know there are some signatories also in the audience. So I'll stop sharing the screen by now, because I think that was the information. Yeah, are there any questions? And maybe also if there are signatories in the audience who would like to say a word why they have signed up, please take the floor as well or raise hands. And we can see if you could have a word on this. Maybe Eva, you have a moment. I'm noticing you're online.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm representing Swedbank Robur. I'm Chief Sustainable Strategist. We are the largest fund asset manager in Sweden, representing about 4 million customers. And in line with our climate strategy, this step further towards sustainability and sustainable asset management, this is just a clear, very important step. And in the complex area on how to measure risks and opportunities, I think the collaborations as Finance for Biodiversity Pledge is a real important one. No single investor can do this by themselves. And in active management, this is truly important for us, and I believe for the investment community. So an important collaboration for us. So thank you, Anne-Marie, for that.
Thank you, Eva. It's always good to hear it from the sector itself. Are there any questions from people? You can sign up to a news update as soon as we know where the next launching moment or celebration moment of new signatories will be. We'll share a new update, so then you can find more information over there as well. I'm noticing there's messages. Yes, well, collaborating with ecosystem restoration organizations could be part of the collaboration, indeed. It's not being activated yet, but it might be that it's part of the activities of the individual institutions. So I'm not aware as a collective on this type of collaboration, but positive impact is certainly also a theme that is of high importance on this, because we're really aiming at reversing nature loss in this decade together with the governments. So we need restoration as well to ensure that this will happen. Is there any other signatory who would like to take the floor and say a brief word on why you have signed up? Or else I suggest that I'm not sure, I'm used to raising hands, but whether this is also possible in Zoom. I'm not noticing any questions or remarks, Antoine, so I think I'll hand over to you.
I think Robert Clapham raised a hand, but then
okay,
lowered
I cannot see it in the... Okay, yes, please speak. I'm not noticing raising hands, but you can moderate the discussion if you like, Antoine, if you can see it.
Yes. Robert, do you would like to? I will give it.
I'll drop the... Robert is in the chat. The microphone is not working. Okay. I'll have the email address and website in the chat, and people can just get in touch with us for any further questions that might pop up later on, maybe tomorrow or whenever. And please reach out to us. We're there to answer any questions also after the webinar. The type of engagements and targets signatories take. There are different targets. So there's one bank also involved, ASN Bank. They're having the net positive effect by 2030 as a target. And I know there's others that are more looking into water. Deforestation is pretty high on the agenda with several investors. And we're just starting to make an inventory of engagements that are done at the moment by individual financial institutions and find ways to act more as a collective on this, or at least collaborate or join that type of engagements. Thanks a lot, and I hope to see you via the email or with a phone call or whatever. So keep in touch, and let's aim high for the CBD outcome.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie, for this presentation. Yes, we fully support Finance for Biodiversity Pledge. It's a very important initiatives, and we are sure we will see it grow in 2021 for having something big and strong at the COP15. We will of course relay any information or question if we have them later on. So now it's time for me to give you a presentation on the Global Biodiversity Score methodology and how it applies to financial institutions. I will start my presentation by a short video as well that we designed for the One Planet Summit, which happened in Paris last week. This video we did with partners was important for us as it highlights the importance of measurement. And that's a strong message that we wanted to hold at the One Planet Summit, and that we will keep on holding for this very important year. And yes, it it connects well obviously with the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge as well. So let me share my screen.
There is only one planet Earth, composed of a multitude of landscapes, shapes and colors. It is home to all life. Bio represents all living beings that populate Earth, including humans. To survive. Biodiversity is the basis of all our activities, resources and materials. It is our life insurance. Today, however,
we cannot see the screen, Antoine.
Is under threat. The extinction rate.
The screen is not shared?
No, I wasn't sure, so I didn't say earlier, but...
Okay, sorry about that, guys. A few technical problems.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good.
There is only one planet Earth, composed of a multitude of landscapes, shapes and colors. It is home to all life. Biodiversity represents all living beings that populate Earth, including humans. Without it, humanity would not be able to survive. Biodiversity is the basis of all our activities, resources and materials. It is our life insurance. Today, however, biodiversity is under threat. The extinction rate for species is 1,000 times greater than it was at the beginning of the industrial era. Our natural resources are being depleted. 50% of the world's economy relies on the services provided by nature. Yet, 60% of ecosystems are now damaged. The cause of these transformations, humanity. Change in land use, habitat fragmentation, climate change, pollution, and invasive species. We must therefore act collectively and quickly. How? By changing how we eat, our habits, both at the individual and corporate levels. There is a link between consumers, citizens, and biodiversity. This is the time to become aware of our economy's impact on biodiversity and nature and make the necessary decisions so that this impact is a positive one. To do so, we must be able to measure the consequences of our choices and strategies. Effective tools on a global scale will enable companies and financial institutions to build and apply real determination for transition. Several initiatives are already underway around the world, such as the Global Biodiversity Score supported by the Caisse des Dépôts and CDC Biodiversité, or those of the IUCN WWF for Caring. These tools make it possible to create a precise policy for non-financial reporting on economic activities. With the creation of a task force on nature-related financial disclosure, TNFD, in 2021, accelerated by Global Canopy, the UNDP, UNEP-FI and WWF, it will soon become possible to redirect financial flows towards activities that deliver nature-positive outcomes. Just as we have learned to measure our carbon footprint, we must learn how to measure our biodiversity footprint, take it into account, and direct it towards a positive purpose. What is in danger can still be saved. Recognizing the value of biodiversity for humanity's well-being means preserving it.
Okay, so with this short introduction, I will start on my presentation on the Global Biodiversity Score itself. I will switch to all right, so we have around 30 minutes now to give you a broad picture of this tool. The idea is not to fully describe technically what is the Global Biodiversity Score. It will take more time, but more like to give you a good idea of what are the main concepts and how it can be used for financial institutions. So I will start my presentation with a brief history of the Global Biodiversity Score, then we come to the main concepts. I will do a focus on data as it's a major topic for the methodology in general, but especially important for the financial institutions. Then I will talk about the aggregated score, which is relevant for financial institutions, as we usually like to deal with one figure rather than several. Then I will talk more broadly about the GBS ecosystem and how all this methodology is deployed with which partners and which kind of communities. Then we will have a Q&A question. For the Q&A, we will try as much as possible to give you, to make you speak, but it seems that we're experiencing a few technical problems to hold you the mic. So I think it's better if you ask your questions on the chat. I have two colleagues, Joshua and Sibyl, with me who can answer those questions directly, and for important one-off, and for others, I will also answer during the Q&A session. So brief history of the GBS. So it's a project which started in 2015. So it's been now 6 years that we're developing this methodology. In 2016, we launched the Club B4B+. I will have the opportunity to talk about it more in detail later on. It's a community of companies that helped us to develop the tool and make sure that it was relevant for operational constraints and fit the needs of the future users. Then I would, in January 2020, sorry, we ended the first review committee of the GBS. It was a very important work for us, as after almost 5 years of development, we prepared the official launch by showing in details the methodology to an expert group and an advisory group to have a detailed feedback on the robustness and the relevance of the methodology. Finally, not finally, but one important step obviously was also the launch of the first version of the GBS, which happened in May 2020. And one last milestone was the first biodiversity footprint assessment conducted by a company, by Schneider Electric, which did so in July 2020. We have now ongoing biodiversity footprint assessment. Yes, it was very important for us to have this pioneer leading other companies towards biodiversity footprint assessments. We have very interesting perspectives on that project. We are here for the long term. We have a strong support of our shareholder group Caisse des Dépôts. The Global Biodiversity Score is now a team of 6 persons fully dedicated to the project, and we have ongoing recruitment for 4 new positions. So we are trying really to strengthen the team and make sure that we will be able to develop the tool and deploy it correctly. I take the opportunity for attendees who are, I know that there are we have students today, for instance, to look at the website and if they're interested to participate in that innovative project, don't hesitate to contact us and have a look at the job offering which are currently open. So now we go to the GBS concept itself. So as you saw in the video, we make a parallel between the carbon footprint and the biodiversity footprint, and that's maybe the easiest way to understand what we're trying to achieve with the GBS. Is really we are trying to build the equivalent of the carbon footprint, but for biodiversity. So it means that we are aiming to capture all the biodiversity impacts of an economic activity in one single aggregated metric. I will describe it later on. We use here the MSA square kilometer. And as for the carbon footprint, we deal with the full value chain. So it's also a key component of this methodology is that we don't focus only on direct impacts, but we are trying to also assess impacts before and after the activity. One also key topic, and I will come back to it later, is the way we account the impacts between the the past impact and the new impact, between the stock of impact and the flows of impact. So that's the way we take into account the temporality in the GBS. We will come back to it later, but we do account differently the stock and the flows. So now what is the GBS? The GBS is a puzzle of model. We didn't really produce models ourselves, but it's more like we assembled them to basically translate a company activity into a biodiversity impact. One key component, key concept and key element is that we decided to take an intermediary step by assessing first the pressures on biodiversity. We did that for a very simple reason, is that the data availability for biodiversity data itself, meaning like ecological surveys, is very low. It's very hard to reach those data, especially if you're trying to assess a full perimeter, a full value chain. So going to the pressures first is much more pragmatic and helps and much more feasible. So a lot of the methodology is actually to translate an economic activity into a list of quantities of pressures. I will come back to which pressures we're looking at. Then one key step is to how we translate those pressures into biodiversity impacts. For that, we use the GloBio model, which is developed by the PBL, which is an environmental assessment body of the Ministry of Environment in the Netherlands. This is a very well recognized model, which was first designed to understand what would be the impact on biodiversity for different scenarios of in the future with economic, social, or climatic assumptions. And to build that that kind of model, they needed to build like a pressure impact relationships to link pressure levels to potential impacts on biodiversity, and we use to link the pressures to the impacts. So the fact that is also gives more or less that we're using in the model, and also leads to the metric, the MSA I was talking about a bit before, as those are fixed in the GloBio model. So here are the list of pressures we are using in the GBS. So we cover in the GBS terrestrial biodiversity and aquatic biodiversity. For aquatic, we actually mean freshwater. We don't cover marine biodiversity. I will come back a bit later on the limits for the coverage. But so for terrestrial biodiversity, we take into account spatial pressures, so coming from land use, so land use itself, and associated fragmentation and encroachment. We take into account also the two different types of pollution, so eutrophication, which comes from nitrogen deposition, and ecotoxicity. Ecotoxicity is not a pressure that is included in GloBio model. We added it as it is an important pressure for biodiversity, and especially for companies in certain sectors. It's very key to be able to assess the impact of ecotoxicity. And finally, on terrestrial biodiversity, we take into account climate change, which is also a very important pressure for terrestrial biodiversity. On the aquatic side, we have more or less the equivalent, so spatial pressures, which are wetland conversion, land use and catchments. We take into account also pollutions through freshwater eutrophication and ecotoxicity. And finally, we take into account hydrological disturbance through two types of subpressures. The disturbance coming from water use and the disturbance coming from climate change. So we have here quite a lot already covered, but we unfortunately also are missing pressures, important pressures. The main one is, I would say, invasive species, and it's due to the lack of scientific data that doesn't allow us to easily, to link economic activity to an invasive species impact expressed in MSA. We don't cover marine biodiversity yet, and that's also a limitation of the GBS at the moment. We partially cover overexploitation, but not fully, partly due to the fact that we don't take into account fishery pressure, both for aquatic and marine biodiversity, but we partially take it into account for terrestrial, as in encroachment, you have this overexploitation concept with hunting and logging, for instance. So what is the metric? We use the MSA. MSA stands for mean species abundance. So the full definition is the average of abundance ratio for local species. But if you try to capture it a bit more intuitively, it's maybe a bit more simple for a first introduction. Basically, a fully intact ecosystem has a maximum MSA ratio of 100%. So if you here on this example, if you have a pristine forest, undisturbed, you have 100% MSA. And the more you're going to apply pressure on this ecosystem, the lower your ratio. So the biodiversity which is still there is going to go. So here we have an example for land use. So you go for land use which is more and more intense, and you see that the ratio in the GloBio model is going lower and lower. We in the GBS use the surfacic equivalent of this MSA by simply multiplying this percentage ratio by the impacted surface. So if I take an example, if I have 100 square meter of pristine forest, it's valued at 100 square meter MSA. Then if I convert it into another type of land use, which is only valued at 40% MSA, it means that the value of biodiversity I have at the end is only 40 square meter MSA, and that I lost 60 square meter MSA. One thing which is nice with this metric is that even for non-specialists, it's quite easy to grasp. More or less, it's linked to the concept of artificialization, which is quite easy to understand for non-specialists, because you can say that 1 square meter loss is the same that converting a pristine forest into a parking lot. There are more complexity within the metric, more granularity within the pressure, but still at the end you have a surface figure that it's understandable for non-specialists, which for communication and sensibilization is very important. So we will see in the future examples this notion of static impact and dynamic impact that I was talking about in my introduction. So it's the way we differentiate the biodiversity impact stock and the new impacts. You have to somehow find a way to take a temporality into account. We decided to go with that framework because it's also easier to understand rather than some other option around time integration. And it was also very important for us to separate new impacts. We don't have the framework, exact framework yet, but we know that the international target is going to be around when we stop biodiversity erosion. So stopping biodiversity erosion means that you stop new impacts, and probably you restore as well. But you have to separately look at the new impacts, because that's going to be a key goal for the next year, to stop those new impacts. Another concept maybe you are more familiar with, because we took the exact same framework than the one on climate, is the concept of scopes. We intentionally kept exactly the same framework, even though we could argue that scope 2 is a bit less relevant for biodiversity, but we thought it was much easier to keep the same framework and make sure that we don't have to explain it again for people who are already used to it as they use it for climate. So briefly, for those who are not familiar with, scope 1 here are the impacts, direct impacts, so impacts of the direct operation. Scope 2 comes from the impacts due to energy purchases. And then you have scope 3, which is divided between upstream and downstream impacts. So all the impact which occurs outside of the direct operations. And this scope 3 is a strong focus for the GBS, as we need to capture those impacts to be able to have a full picture and a relevant picture of what is the biodiversity impact for an economic activity, the same way you have to take it into account for carbon footprint. Okay, so those are the concepts. I will go through my presentation. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the chat. We'll try to ask them as much as we can right now, and otherwise at the end of the session. I want to make a focus here on the data we used. We used for the GBS. It's important to understand the variety of data that can be used and the challenge around their availability. So I come back to the global layout of the model. I was telling you that GloBio and GBS is a puzzle of different models, and embedded associated to the different models, we have different type of data that we can use. So two things are important. First is that you have different data of different quality, and second, that the model is built in a way that we always use the best available data. So we try to have the data, the more precise data. If we have it, we will use it, and otherwise we will use degraded data. So it comes to the hierarchy of data that we are able to use. So on this pyramid, you see all the different types of data, which comes from the submodels that are used in the GBS. On the top of the pyramid, you have the base data that you can get to assess biodiversity impacts, but also the one which are the less available. And the lower you go in that pyramid, the easier it is to access those data, but also the less accuracy you have, because you need to add modelization layers to be able to assess the impact. So the best data, once again, is the ecological surveys. Very good, very rare. Second category in terms of quality are the data on pressure directly. So greenhouse gases for climate change, land use type and associated surface for land uses, and spatial pressures. Then it goes to inventories of raw materials and inventories of physical flows. So we built many raw materials submodels that we call COMO tools that allow us to translate the production of a given raw material in a given country to a biodiversity impact. So for those who are familiar with LCA, it's like we built like a data set of impact factors for the main raw materials, and we localize those impact factors. So that allows us to translate a tonnage of a given raw material into produced into a country into a potential impact. We are also able to use physical flows, such as which are not directly pressures but close to it, such as water consumption, pollution emissions. Yes, those are the main ones. And finally, the ground, the data which usually is used as default data because it's broadly available, and it helps us to have like already a first evaluation is financial data. This financial data has to be sectorized and localized, and then it can be translated into potential impact. Without going into the detail, we do that using input-output models. So more precisely, we use ExIOBase. Those models enriched with impact factors on raw materials that we developed help us to translate a given turnover of a given sector in a given country into a list of physical flows that are then translated into a potential impact. So keep in mind this this pyramid of data. It's for the data sets that are going to be launched, and for the assessment of biodiversity impact at the portfolio level. It's important to have in mind all those data can be used, and that the most precise data will be used in the GBS when you have different ways of assessing the impact. Aggregated score now. So that's a notion which is important for especially for finance institution, because we cover basically two dimensions in a biodiversity footprint. I talked about the fact that we account separately static and dynamic impacts, and we also cover terrestrial and aquatic biodiversity. So if you want to make a proper biodiversity footprint assessment and you want to report it consistently, it's the best way of doing it is by reporting those 4 compartments, because they are of different nature. So it's I mean, it's if you aggregate them, it's possible, and I will show you a methodology that we developed to do so. But the most accurate information is by reporting those 4 figures. Yet it's not convenient for many uses, especially when you have to have when you want to analyze the biodiversity impact of a portfolio with multiple lines. Dealing with 4 compartments can be quite difficult. So you have two things to do if you want to aggregate those 4 compartments. The reason that we don't simply add those impacts is because structurally the aquatic the impacts on aquatic biodiversity are smaller than the one on terrestrial biodiversity, and it's due to the fact that the overall size of terrestrial ecosystems are much larger by a factor more than 10 than the aquatic ecosystems, which means that if you do a simple addition, you will tend to dilute the aquatic impacts and give them less importance than the terrestrial ones. So to be able to compare those aquatic and terrestrial impacts, what we do is that we divide by the overall size of the total respective ecosystems by looking at part per billion. So at the end, you don't look at absolute impact, but you look at fraction of impact relatively to the total surface, total stock of biodiversity. And this way, it makes it possible to add terrestrial and aquatic impacts that now are converted into MSA PPB, so for part per billion. The other dimension is how you combine dynamic and static impact. So for this, we take a recovery time assumption. That recovery time assumption is a concept that you find in other assessment methodology. That's a concept that is also used, for instance, in the LCA world and in metrics such as PDF square meter a year. We took an assumption of 50 years recovery with a linear curve, so very simple curve, the one that is illustrated at the bottom of the screen. And at the end, you say that a static impact, so a stock of impact, so the fact that you're holding the biodiversity at a low level due to the fact that you keep on maintaining a level of pressure that doesn't allow the biodiversity to recover. is a missed opportunity. So it means that by still applying this pressure, you avoid a gain, a recovery gain, which is evaluated by 1/50th of the static impact. Because if you recover fully in 50 years, basically the first year you would account a gain of a 1/50th. So that's with this ratio that we compare static impact and dynamic impact. So you add those two by dividing the static impact by 50. At the end, we do both those combinations to get what we call an MSA score, which is expressed in MSA part per billion. Here you have an example that maybe, I mean, obviously the presentation will be available, so that's something you can come back to later on, and with concrete figures, so for you to make sure that this conversion is clear. All right, so that's it for the ecosystems. I will now come to the GBS ecosystem. So as Antoine was mentioning in the introduction, we always targeted two main users for the GBS, the corporate side and the investor side. For us, it's very important that those two type of actors speak the same language. It would be, we think it would be very counterproductive that they use different methodologies, different metric, etc. I mean, if we imagine a world where you have a carbon footprint, which would be different for companies and investors, we easily imagine that the dynamic would be much lower in terms of mainstreaming climate change into the economy. So the idea was really to provide a consistent framework for those two type of users. So we developed really like two sets of solutions, but based on the same methodology in order to give that common framework. We provide trainings also to help users and also to train assessors on the corporate side to be able to conduct those assessments, as we want to have as many users and assessors possible to have a deployment as quick as possible for that kind of exercises. I mentioned the club B4B+. We launched it in 2016. The idea was really to produce a tool that was anchored into the real world, not something which is theoretical and not useful for future users. So we used the club as an experimental ground to test the tool in various case studies. We have two work stream in this club. Here you see the value chain work stream, and you also have the finance work stream. Now the club counts more than 50, I think, companies. We also have like partners. It's a very active community. It's a very good place to be if you're MSA user. It's a good place to be if you want to start tackling this issue. I mean, this topic about biodiversity footprint, and it's a good way also to exchange good practices. We have more information on the club. I will give you the web link later on, but it's something which is very helpful for the methodology and also for members, as they have like a very up-to-date information about the tool itself and the links to other initiatives. Because as you saw in the video, and more generally, we are very linked to all the main national and international initiatives around biodiversity accounting and biodiversity mainstream and for our users to provide an international framework that takes into account all the developments which are very, I mean, it's a very active topic at the moment, and it's very important to follow it closely to make sure that the tool is relevant to those frameworks, to those on-building frameworks, and also to make sure, I mean, we also feed those frameworks by giving them our return on experience on how companies deal with those type of exercises. Finally, here we here to focus more on the ecosystem part for financial institutions. So on the right hand of this layout, we have two ways of providing solutions to investors, either by working directly with them to assess, to help them to assess the impact. We did it in the past, we keep on doing it. And the second way of working together is by collaborating with data provider. We are building a strong partnership with Carbon for Finance to be able to build and deliver biodiversity data. And I will let Marianne talk about it a bit later. So I won't spoil our presentation about BIA. That's it for me. So I think we still have time for a few questions. Just as we go for the round of questions, I will leave that screen on with more information about the club, about our publications, about the recruitment, about contacts within the team. So don't hesitate to go through those links and to contact us for further information. Do we have questions? I will. I'm asking my colleagues as I couldn't see them without because with the presentation on my computer, I couldn't see how the question went on the chat. Do we have live questions?
No, we don't have any unanswered question except one which is going to be answered by Marianne.
Okay.
And now we've got a new one. Why did you use abundance for the MSA metric and not species richness?
As I was mentioning, it's mostly because we use GloBio model, and GloBio model use the MSA metric for their pressure impact relationships. So yes, it's the main reason we started with MSA. It's not very far from species richness, but it's not exactly. Well, most of, as you saw with the company list, most of the users are big companies at the moment, because they are the ones which are the more equipped to tackle those kind of issues. But smaller companies are also an important target. It's difficult maybe to work directly with them, as they usually don't have the manpower to conduct those kind of exercise. But we are looking at organizations that gather small companies, and hopefully we will be able also to work at that level. Sounds good. If you have, we can work. If some of you are interested to work directly with us, yes, don't hesitate to contact us. Any more questions? Otherwise, I will leave the floor to Marianne from Carbon for Finance to talk to you about biodiversity impact analytics. Marianne, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you, Antoine. I share my screen. Everyone can see it. Well, thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here to present our new project, the Biodiversity Impact Analytics Database. So I'm Marianne Vincent, I'm for Carbon for Finance. So I would just say, share anymore, okay. I will just say a few words about Carbon for Finance before starting the presentation of BIA. So we are part of the group Carbon 4, which was created in 2007 by the climate expert Jean-Marc Jancovici and Alain Grandjean. The group is organized in two different branches, the consulting entity, Carbon 4, and the climate data provider, Carbon for Finance. So for more than 10 years, Carbon 4 has been performing life cycle carbon assessment in all economic sectors. And based on this sectoral climate expertise, the group decided to create Carbon for Finance in 2016 with the objective to provide investors with a reliable data solution to assess climate risk and opportunities in their books. So now Carbon for Finance, we offer a complete set of climate data solutions covering both physical risk and transition risk. And these proprietary methodologies allow financial organizations to measure the carbon footprint of their portfolio, the assessment with the alignment with the to-do risk trajectory, and all the other physical risk. We apply a very rigorous bottom-up approach, which means that we assess each company individually in a discriminating manner within a sector. So that's the key difference with the other ESG data providers. Carbon for Finance is first a climate expert that came to the data and not the other way around. So we bring the expertise and scientific approach of our consulting sister entity into our database and analysis. As you can see, our clients are asset managers, asset owners, banks, and index providers wishing to report their climate performance or develop climate investment tools. So for climate data, we currently cover the major equities and fixed income market indices, the MSCI World, the S&P 500, the STOXX 600, and on the fixed income side, the BB Euro Aggregate Index. So together with CDC Biodiversité, we want to leverage on our climate expertise and data sets to build a database on biodiversity impacts for investors. So in 2020, we decided to enter into a strategic partnership to develop a biodiversity database based on the GBS methodology. Indeed, Carbon for Finance, we had a successful experience to convert Carbon 4 methodologies or carbon footprint into a database, co-working with the consultant to develop and update the methodology. And that is exactly what we aim to do with our biodiversity partner, CDC Biodiversité. The objective is to make the GBS methodology accessible to investors who wish to calculate the biodiversity impact on large investment portfolios. As we experience it on the climate side, the challenge for the GBS has always been to find the best compromise between scientific robustness and operationality for the future users. That's why we understand each other so well with CDC Biodiversité, because we share the conviction that the methodology needs to be transparent and robust, but together with a practical application for investors who need to assess the biodiversity of their portfolio on a large scale. On top of that, we are convinced that it is very, very valuable for us to combine climate and biodiversity analysis, because these topics are closely linked. It is important to reunite the climate and biodiversity communities to joint efforts on common problems and solutions. So practically speaking, the analyses conducted on climate and biodiversity have a lot of similarities. Doing them together, we avoid doing twice the job and offer a consistent data set of results. As we are already collecting a lot of raw data to do the climate analysis of a company, for us, it's the next step to leverage on this data and to have a biodiversity footprint. So BIA, Biodiversity Impact Analytics, will benefit for complementary expertise and methodologies. So first, it's our methodology for transition risk, the carbon impact analytics methodology. We perform analysis of the full value chain for corporates, and we recalculate carbon emissions scope 1, 2, 3 upstream and downstreams on induced emission and emission savings. And we do that on collecting operational and physical data in public and extra-financial reports, meaning that we have already this full value chain approach and bottom-up approach on the carbon side. We have also developed a methodology for physical risk, climate risk impact screening. So the physical risk is the vulnerability of a portfolio towards climate hazards. And to do so, we collect precise data on the geographic and sectoral breakdown of the activity of a company. And then we stress this couple of country sector to different climate scenarios and the vulnerability of these couples towards the climate hazards. Meaning that we have already a lot of information at sector and country level for all the corporates we have in our database. And then I will not talk a lot about the GloBio model that Antoine described before, but the model assesses the impact of various pressures on biodiversity and thickness, and I will complete the underlying data to calculate the global biodiversity score. So as presented by Antoine, the GPS relies on several data collection and model to link activity, pressures, and impacts. And we will leverage on existing Carbon for Finance databases, meaning that we will leverage on our historical data since 2015, on our bottom-up analysis on climate impact of corporates, and we will complete all our existing data points with biodiversity underlying data to finally compute a biodiversity impact thanks to the GPS methodology. So more precisely, so Carbon for Finance will provide company-specific data of two types. For monetary data, based on our CRIS database, we will use the existing data on geographical and sectoral breakdown of a company's activity and turnover. Then for climate change pressure, we have got in-depth information on the calculation of GHG emission for scope 1, 2, and 3, and that will replace the climate change pressure of the GPS model. And for all other pressures, pressure amounts are estimated based on a combination of EXO-based model and CDC biodiversity commodity impact factors. So pressure amounts are then translated into biodiversity impacts using the GloBio pressure impact relationship. And all in all, we will compute all the data to create the biodiversity impact analytics. So the main pillars of our database, as disclosed in this slide, we share the conviction with CDC Biodiversité that the methodology and the database need to be transparent to be challenged, understood, and embraced by the users and the community, because it's it's a key pillar to have the GPS methodology as a standard at international level. We share the approach of having a full assessment of the value chain, scope 1, 2, and 3. We have this sectoral expertise within Carbon for Finance at climate level, and we want to extend that to the biodiversity. We have a global coverage, so global coverage for listed assets, equities, bonds, corporate bonds, sovereign bonds, green bonds, but we can extend that to the unlisted assets. We do that for the climate methodologies, and it is possible to do it with the GPS methodology as well. We share the conviction of continuous development. That's the way we work today with our partners and clients for climate methodology, and GPS do the same on its side, because the methodology needs to grow and evolve through a collaborative effort of all stakeholders. And the database will be flexible, meaning that there will be an interface, a web platform, but we can share all the underlying data and indicators so that they can be integrated in your internal system. So the roadmap. So in 2020, we enter into this strategic partnership to develop a methodology and to work on several case studies with CDC Biodiversity and to make sure that our expertise are compatible, and it is the case. The case study was quite successful. So by the end of last year, we started to construct the database. So the priority for 2021 was to offer a large coverage of the dataset, allowing investors to get a full picture of the portfolio's biodiversity footprint. So BIA will help users to understand the biodiversity impacts of the investments, where they come from, and in order to report their biodiversity impact in their report and decision process. So to do so, we needed to provide a large coverage at first. So in April, there will be the official launch of the BIA database with 6,000 values, equities, corporate bonds, sovereign bonds, and green bonds. In June, we will release the web platform, meaning that in the meantime, all the data set will be available on Excel format or whatever format, but the full functionalities of the platform will be ready in June. And in October, we will extend the coverage to 10,000 values based on the full referentials of value we've got on the climate side at Carbon for Finance. In 2022, the database will be improved, leveraging on Carbon for Finance expertise on bottom-up approach, meaning we will collect company-specific data at company level, and we will complete the data, the underlying data we've got for climate with biodiversity underlying data. So more and more physical data and pressures and raw materials will be collected and integrated in the footprint results, making them more and more precise and granular. But we wanted at first to give investors a large coverage so that we can start measuring, understanding, getting to know the new metrics, MSA, square meter, because after the ton of CO2 and the alignment, now we've got a new metric to use for biodiversity. So it was very important to start with a large coverage at first. So the web platform is still under development, but the interface will allow users to explore the results either at portfolio and at company level. So an example of this report is given here with McDonald's. So the main functionalities for both companies and portfolios are all the indicators that Antoine described before, but to give some examples, you will have the global aggregated score in MSA PPB with all the comfort combination of terrestrial, aquatic, and dynamic and static impacts. You can have all the performance compared to sectoral and global benchmarks, the absolute impacts breakdown per scopes and pressures. So there's still a lot of information that will be available at corporate and portfolio level. So to summarize, the BIA database is the first version of a larger application of GBS for investors. And the objective is to quantify the end-to-end biodiversity footprints with a global coverage. So the official launch will be in April. We are finalizing the full coverage of the data with a parallel run with CDC Biodiversity to make sure that the analysts within Carbon 4 are fully trained, and we will have the support of CDC Biodiversity as well. So as for Antoine, I can't see the
yes, very good presentation. We actually have one question on the chat. Will you calculate historical data so that portfolio managers can carry out backtests?
So we will have the data. So we can always do a statistical retropolation of the data to make sure you can have some historical data for your backtesting. And then, year after year, we will build an historical data with more precise data. But yeah, of course, for historical data at the beginning, it will be statistical.
Okay, thank you. Another question was about GloBio model, how often it is updated. So this is more on the CDC side. At the moment, we work with version 3.6, and it had been recently updated to 4.0. I think it was updated last year. So yes, the model is still developed by the PBL, regularly updated, even though they don't commit to a frequency of commitment. But as it is a model which is used regularly by international institutions, they keep on maintaining it, and there's a commitment from the Ministry of Environment of Netherlands to keep on financing keep on financing GloBio. So yes, in terms of frequency, it's hard to say, but we still have an update to do in the GBS to potentially integrate part or all of the new version of GloBio. Any more questions regarding BIA or GBS, if something came up to your mind during the presentation? Okay, I don't see any more questions, so maybe we will go for the next presentation with Laurent Debord, Head of Equity Portfolio Management and Fund Selection at Groupe Caisse des Dépôts Asset Management Division. Laurent, are you with us? We're a bit ahead of schedule.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you very well. We can see you as well, so you're good. I will share your presentation.
Thank you very much. Which is not so much my presentation as actually Elisabeth Cassagne and Stéphane Amar's presentation. There is the two people within my team that actually launched the project with CDC Biodiversity. I must apologize for them, but they are not available today. So I will make the presentation for them, but don't be too surprised if I must refer to Antoine for some technical issues, as I'm not very familiar with the details of the methodology. The fact is,
we will assist you on the technical side. We have also Joshua and Cyril with us who
thank you very much.
Closely the case study, so you're fully supported.
Thank you. Actually, the fact is, we at Caisse des Dépôts, if you would be so kind as to advance the presentation, please. Thank you. We, Caisse des Dépôts signed the Finance for Biodiversity page in September, which is no surprise, as Caisse des Dépôts is a parent company of CDC Biodiversité. And our CEO insisted that we would put forward biodiversity and work for the protection and restoration of biodiversity, also in our financial activities and investments. Caisse des Dépôts very recently put forward a biodiversity action plan, which you can find on our internet website. Caisse des Dépôts itself is a French, most of you probably know it, as a French development bank, mainly known for its action in social housing, financing the social housing in France, but we are also a large institutional investor, managing more than 170 billion euros, invested in bonds, shares, or equities, investment in unlisted companies, property, forest, and so on. And so we do have a responsibility as an investor to orient our investment for the best of all, beside our direct beneficiaries. And we, for instance, are especially careful of ESG factor within our investments. And for instance, we do have very specific CO2 carbon gas lowering imprint target, and we have beyond our all of our portfolio, which all of them take into account ESG factor, but we also have for new development some kind of test portfolio where we can do test methodologies. So our idea with CDC Biodiversity was to try to implement the GBS methodology to measure biodiversity footprints of our portfolios. The idea, just as for carbon gas emission, is that we are somehow, as owner of companies, responsible for the impact of those companies. So we are keen to measure this impact, both for deciding the construction of the portfolio depending of the impact we measure, and also for engaging the companies according to this impact. So here, if you agree, yeah, thank you very much. The case study, the first case study was completely theoretical. We just took 200, the largest 200 listed companies, and did try with biodiversity, CDC Biodiversity and the GBS tool to measure the impact of this set of the 200 largest listed European companies. The data that CDC Biodiversity told us it needed was the breakdown of the turnover of those companies, the sales of those companies by region and industry, according to the methodology that was explained a bit earlier to you. So we gave them this breakdown because this information is available to us through the use of a third-party data provider, which is FactSet. As those information, this turnover breakdown of the activity of the companies by region industry is important, so not only for biodiversity footprint, but also for all manner of evaluation of the impact of the company, and especially a financial impact and the financial sensitivity, sensitivity of this turnover to external events and to economic conditions. So we did have this information, this key information, and the idea was to give this information to CDC Biodiversity with the agreement of FactSet to evaluate the impact of the portfolio. This virtual portfolio, it was an index portfolio composed of those 200 largest companies. The question were, what is the impact on biodiversity of those listed companies? Which industry have the largest impact? Where this impact come from, according to the methodology, scope, pressure, and what could we do with this information forward on our actual portfolios? So we get a couple of answers on next pages. And according to the data that was processed in the methodology, all of this was processed by CDC Biodiversity. We could, CDC Biodiversity and the team could compute an exposure by sector to the different diversity, or more exactly, biodiversity footprint by sector, and looking at the static, as was already explained to you, the biodiversity methodology compute both a static footprint a dynamic footprint, which is momentum of the footprint. The static footprint, it appeared that it was mainly due to the one sector, the manufacture of food products. That is agriculture, for instance, or mainly agriculture, with more than 50% of the static impact, which is quite striking, but not surprising result according to the specialist. Probably all the people from CDC Biodiversité could elaborate on this result. Maybe we can look at the dynamic impact. The dynamic impact was again manufacture of food products, but also electricity, or more generally energy production, and the manufacture of coke, so thermal coal, coke, refined petroleum products, which is a large part, a large part of this dynamic impact, while it's actually striking fact is that those different sectors, which are the main responsible, who are mainly responsible for the biodiversity footprint of the whole, are only a small fraction of this portfolio. For instance, manufacture of food products is only 4% of the financial exposure of the portfolio, while it's 20% of the dynamic impact, and we have seen it's more than 50% of the static impact, biodiversity impact of the portfolio, which is quite good news on a financial and probably also ecological point of view, because it means that acting within the portfolio and this sector will not be overarchingly damaging for the financial variables of the portfolio. It probably won't be extraordinarily risky to diminish the weight of those companies within the portfolio. Right, it may have an effect on the biodiversity, or on another way of acting. Engaging those companies will be not that difficult, since there is probably only a limited number of companies that you may have to engage in order to have an effective impact on biodiversity. We could ask us what is the kind of impact in this regard. It's mainly within the scope 3 impacts through supply chains. That is quite a striking result. And as for the dynamic impacts, it's obviously land use and static impact. Excuse me, static impact is mainly due to land use, obviously, agriculture, and on the other hand, the dynamic impact is mainly due to the climate change pressure driven by energy producing companies. So we ask to ourselves whether or not such information was redundant with information we already compute according to due to climate change policy. That is, we do have a climate change policy within portfolio. We do exclude thermal coal companies. We also look to have a limited impact on a limited carbon footprint within the portfolios. So we did a small test, which was to compute the biodiversity impact, not this time on the whole of the 200 largest companies, but on a specific portfolio we have, that is this experimental portfolio, in which we try to take into account a number of new and experimental methodologies and especially concerning the taking into account of the SDGs within asset management. And with this portfolio, which is a portfolio with a moderately reduced carbon footprint, its carbon footprint is only 3/4 of the carbon footprint of passive indexed portfolio. We wanted to know if what were the results for the biodiversity footprint of this portfolio. And the answer was that actually this low carbon footprint portfolio had quite a bad biodiversity footprint. So we must conclude with an aggregated score of over 100, so more than 25% over the aggregated score of the benchmark portfolio, passive portfolio, which means that while this portfolio has a reduced carbon footprint, it indeed have a large biodiversity footprint, which means we must take into account biodiversity if we want to take a global or complete view of environment factor within our portfolio management, and it is not sufficient to look at the carbon footprint to have a comprehensive approach of the environment. Indeed, obviously, biodiversity score give us a new information that was not included within the carbon footprint information. That may be may not be a surprise to you who are all, I guess, very familiar with biodiversity, but for us financial investors, that was something we have to learn through this experimentation. Well, that is most of what I had to say. What could we do in order to improve the carbon footprint of the portfolio, and more importantly, the carbon footprint, the biodiversity footprint of the portfolio, and more importantly, the biodiversity footprint of our investment decision. Obviously, we could less finance companies with a bad biodiversity footprint, but it may not be the only or even the best course. Probably it's important also to put pressure on those companies through pledge, like for the common action of like-minded investors through voting in on the company as equity holder, as shareholders on different resolution, and also to enter dialogue with this company, either in a one-to-one setting or through collective action with other members of pledges. Which is also the idea expressed by the following slide, if I'm right, which is if you want to act to diminish the impact of your portfolio, you can exclude high impact companies, which is probably the more efficient, since we saw that actually a very small number of companies had much very large impact on the global portfolio, but it must probably be done with parallel, done with also engaging those companies so as to make those companies change their technologies and behavior, so as to maximize the impact of the investment decisions. Thank you. Do you have any question which I may have to redirect toward the CDC Biodiversité? Hello, Laurent.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Yes, you do have a question. You can see it on the chat.
Oui. bonjour Magued et Abou Ali, pardon, je ne sais jamais quel prénom c'est Magued, voilà, pardon Magued. Et have you tried to look at the correlation between CO2 and biodiversity on an issue basis? Actually, not yet, but we certainly will do that. That's a good idea. Indeed. Thank you.
Any other question on the chat for Laurent?
Thank you all.
All right.
I'll give you back the floor.
Thank you very much, Laurent. Very interesting presentation, very interesting work. We are looking forward working more with you and your team and dig into those results, conduct complementary analysis, and indeed the links or the eventual correlation between CO2 biodiversity is a topic which is very interesting and that needs more work to have clearer ideas on it. If we still have yes, Laurent. Sorry, you're on mute. You're mute.
One explanation maybe for the last question that we posed is that for the time being, we do compute the carbon footprint on scope 1 and scope 2. It's only a scope 1 and scope 2 computation. We're in the just trying to take into account scope 3 too, while within the the biodiversity footprint, scope 3 is obviously both taken into account and a very large share of the total footprint. So that may be one important explanation. For instance, food processing is not a large share of our carbon footprint within the portfolio, while we have seen that it is a large share of the biodiversity footprint of the portfolio. Excuse me.
Thank you, Laurent. Yes, and that's something why it will also be maybe interesting to test BIA when it will be out, as the coverage is very good on climate for they cover all scopes. So that's something which is interesting between the two presentations, and I thank again Marianne and Laurent for them. There's a link between them. What we did with Caisse des Dépôts was based on, I would say, more basic data, only on financial data from FactSet, but those kind of analysis could be conducted also with BIA database and enriched with which is enriched with a good, very good knowledge on climate brought by Carbon 4. Yes, so my colleague was mentioning on the chat that we do have trainings, as we do have publications as well. If you want to get further into the GBS, we have a website describing the club as well. You are welcome, obviously, to join. Welcome to look at the job offers as well, if you're looking for an interesting way of putting your energy to help biodiversity. If no one else has a question, I think we will close the session a bit earlier than expected, but I see no issue with that. So maybe another 1 minute for last questions. Otherwise, I will end this session. I already thank all our speakers today, Anne-Marie, Laurent, Marianne, and Antoine. Thanks a lot also to my colleagues for supporting this webinar with me. And yes, please don't hesitate to contact us 2021 is a big year for biodiversity, big year for finance and biodiversity, and we have operational solutions to help you to tackle this very interesting topic, which is biodiversity preservation. All right, so no questions. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar, and wish you a good end of day, and hopefully talk to you soon to go further on. Bye-bye.